Well, very good afternoon to you. This is The Race, and each week we're in a different province, tapping the pulse of the ANC's party faithful. And those views emerging from nearly 5,000 interviews conducted by research group Mark Data. And today we're in the important province of Mpumalanga, and political economist Lumkile Mondi is with me to unpack the numbers as well as the methodology. Lumkile, good afternoon to you. So first of all, let's look at Mpumalanga if we can. And I want to start off with that crucial number of 736 delegates.
Yes.
This is the second biggest province.
Yes.
How important is Mpumalanga then in the greater scheme of things?
This is a very critical province which could change the fortunes of both the front leaders, Cyril Ramaphosa as well as Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. So it becomes very critical for one to have support from this province.
Also, as far as Mpumalanga is concerned, it's the top line here, which is interesting. The so-called Premier League is reportedly a group of pro-Zuma premiers. Where does the Premier League then fit into the province of Mpumalanga?
The Premier League fits into the broader South Africa because these are premiers in our provinces who are seen to be very close to the president. Specifically, the Mpumalanga province I'm discussing today, the Northwest, as well as the Free State, who have been seen to be really power brokers, not only within the ANC, but in areas where NTZ, in this case, could be seen to be a candidate that could lead the African National Congress.
Right now, ahead of the conference in December, how much sway then does that so-called Premier League hold?
Well, that's a very contestable, and I believe that based on the research that we've done, whereby about 34% didn't want to respond, given the history of violence in the province, that therefore I'm looking forward to a discussion about this, to hear some of our colleagues and analysts, what views can they ascribe to the fact that, we remain having very few indications as to where we're going to be going with this province.
What are you reading into that high refusal rate?
Well, what we're reading is that there's a lot of fear. A fear among some of the respondents that we polled. The fear that there could be consequences if you show your hand.
Fear of what?
Fear of death, Jeremy. The price is very, very high. The stakes are very, very, very high. So therefore, some of the respondents want to show their hand, and hopefully when it comes to December, they'll respond and show their hand so that we can have certainty as to who leads the African National Congress come next year.
And this refusal rate, and we will talk about it a little bit later on, is a whole lot higher. It's significantly higher, statistically higher than the other provinces that we've looked at.
Which surprised us, because we thought, one would have thought, Jeremy, that with KZN, with the history that we know around the killings, particularly of ANC councillors, that the province that has got a higher non-respondent rate from the ANC voters. Here in Mpumalanga, we see this, and it's what's puzzling, and hence it shows to us that there's so much conflict there that we don't see, and it's not reported compared to KZN.
Now let's look at the results itself as far as Mpumalanga is concerned. This is for ANC President first and second choice. 47, just over 47% in favour of Cyril Ramaphosa, 12.4% second choice, which is considerably higher than everybody else. I want to get to that 15% in just a moment, which I also think is interesting. But is this surprising?
This is surprising, given the Premier League and what has been said. However, we must also be mindful that in these surveys, there's contestability. And the fact that there's fear, and the fact that people do not show their hand, they may say something in the poll. However, come December, the conference, do something different. So it remains to be seen how these candidates, Cyril, Nkosazana and Lindiwe, how they respond going forward towards the conference in December.
And a lot of undecideds.
This one is not surprising, as we were saying earlier, that the fact that there's so much violence.
It's the refusal factor.
There's a refusal factor. That's what it is.
Okay, so let's go back. So that's for the president. Let's look now at the Premier Scorecard, if we can. So has the Premier, David Mabuza, done a good job? Just a tad over 60% saying yes, 32.2% saying reasonable. First of all, how do we define reasonable? What is a reasonable performance, so, as far as he's concerned?
As far as he's concerned, they believe that he's done a better job, but he could have done better. So the other people saying that, no, we give him a chance, that if he had to stand again, we'll probably still support him. So they're not like these ones who say, no, he's failed dismally. Or those fence sitters who say, you know what, we can't show our hand at all.
How does these two figures combined then, how might they help the candidacy of Cyril Ramaphosa?
Well, these in fact become critical whether where the Premier himself stands. Is the Premier going to be aligned to the Premier League, or is he going to be persuaded through Cyril Ramaphosa and those that are backing Cyril Ramaphosa, or Lindiwe Sisulu for that matter? So those questions, Jeremy, are gonna, I think, will tell themselves in December. But what we're seeing here is that, yes, David and his colleagues in the ANC in Mpumalanga do have a support, and that support is shown by the support that you've seen of 47% of Cyril Ramaphosa.
The 24% who's saying he hasn't done a good job.
Yes.
What would they be concerned about?
Well, they're concerned about corruption. We know that that's come true in most of our surveys, including Mpumalanga. They're concerned about poverty. They're concerned about also the levels of how land has been redistributed, that the land remains in the hands of whites. So these are the issues that are really impacted upon these.
Well, let's look at one of those corruption issues if we can. Again,
Yes.
this is something that we have asked in the continuum across the board.
Yes, yes.
So let's see how Mpumalanga responds to that. It's a true or false question. A criminal mafia operating in government and parastatals is running South Africa. As we said last week, this is a real indictment on both national and provincial government. 41.8% saying completely true, 24.7% saying there is some truth in it, even 9.6% saying there is little truth,
Yes.
only 3.1% saying false. These two figures combined are cause for a great deal of concern.
Well, in fact, Jeremy, as we have been discussing the past few weeks, but also in the past week, with all these books coming out, the discussion in the print media as well as on television about how South Africa has lied down. So these really show that our concern at national level are also reflected at local level, whereby the very same loyal ANC voters see issues about the level of corruption, the fact that our country is being run by a government that's not accountable at all.
That's the top line as far as Mpumalanga is concerned. Before we bring in our two experts who are sitting at the big round table, I just want you to recap for me very quickly, Lumkile, about the methodology. Again, how is this research being conducted?
This research, Jeremy, were about 4,944 respondents nationally. It's all not focus group, but one-on-one, where we interviewed in their own languages.
How long would an interview typically take?
An interview, Jeremy, takes an hour to 2 hours of that individual, depending on the willingness, because remember that we have some that don't want to talk at all.
Yeah.
So in that case, it'll be very, very quick. But more critical, Jeremy, the idea for us is to really get an understanding of these ANC members. How are they going to be responding, given the fact that on poverty, on land reform and corruption, they've got strong views as reflected in the survey that we've shown.
Mkila, I'm going to ask you to have a seat at our big round table along with our two experts as we continue the conversation. And still ahead on the race, we are live in Bombela, and eNCA reporter Samkelo Maseko is tracking developments for us as we speak. We'll pick that up in just a moment. This is The Race.
The race for Mpumalanga has well and truly begun. I am Samkelo Maseko with the latest from Bombela. I'll have a full report as the ANC's elective conference looms large on the horizon.